Everybody, thank you for joining us today. We are here today for Amazing TV with our special guest, DJ Wayne Williams. He is a legendary pioneer of house music out of Chicago. He is also the founder of the Chosen Few DJs, throws the yearly party in Chicago for Chosen Few Picnic, and is also the senior VP of Jive and Tracks Records. Thank you for joining us today, Wayne. Good to have you.
Yeah, it's great being here.
So, you go very far back with the history of Chicago. I mean, you basically, as a young teen, helped discover dance music at that time and helped it develop into what we know of today as house music, specifically Chicago house music. How did that happen? Like, what made you find that music?
Wow. So, I started DJing in 1973. My sister's boyfriend was a DJ, and she was 3 years older than me. And he would give basement parties at his house, and they would be all slow dancing. The record would go off, and that's back when it was one turntable. And so I would be back there, and so I would put on the next record, and I chose the next record and put it on, and I saw how they reacted to the record that I chose. So that's kind of what gave me life. I'm like, wow, they like what I like, right? And that kind of put me on the projectile to want to be a DJ. And so I ended up doing my 8th grade graduation party. And that was the first party I DJ'd. And from there, I just started buying music, finding music. And then my freshman year in high school, an upperclassmate of mine gave a party at this gay club on the north side of Chicago called the Den 1. And I had never been on the north side of Chicago. And Chicago, if you don't know, is very segregated. So people usually stay in their area. And and I'd never been to a gay club before. I didn't, honestly, at that time, I didn't even know what gay was, right? And so I go and I'm listening to the music, and everything was so exciting for me. It was one of my first parties, definitely my first party in a club, and around like older kids and peers who I went to Catholic school, so the Catholic school kind of crowd, right? And you hear this amazing sound system in this club, and the first time I heard a sound system like that, so I have all this energy going, right? But the crazy thing, by that time, I'm listening to the music, and the music changes without the record going off. And I'm used to the record going off and putting the next record on. I'm like, well, how the hell you do that? It was like magic to me. I'm like, how do you keep the record going? And it's a different song, right? And so I went up to the DJ booth. I said, hey man, how you do that? And he told me, well, he had 2 turntables and a mixer. And that's the first time I had seen both of those. And he said, so that's how I'm doing it. But the other difference was he was playing, at that time I was playing mostly R&B and funk music. He was playing disco, and the disco I had heard on the radio at that time was mainly commercial disco, like I Love the Nightlife, records like that, right? And Bee Gees and stuff like that. He was playing soulful, urban disco. I never heard that before. And so, like, My Love Is Free, 10%, I was like, whoa, right? So I'm like, man, where can I get this music? He says, well, you have to, only place you're really going to hear this kind of music is in the gay club. And I'm like, okay, what's a gay club? And he's like, well, you're in one. I said, I'm in one. And he said, yeah. I said, okay. Now, mind you, the DJ booth was upstairs. And he said, look over. Because I said, well, what makes it gay? I said, what makes it gay? He said, look down at the bar. You see those 2 guys over there? And I looked down and saw them, and they were huddled up, kissing each other. He said, that's what makes it gay. I was like, oh shit, right? Because I honestly had never seen that before, right? This is like 1975, 76, right? By this point. And so I'm like, wow, okay. I said, but I didn't care about that. I'm like, yeah, but where can I find this music though? And he said, where do you live? And I told him where I live in South Shore. And he said, there's a gay bar by you called the Jeffrey Pub. He says, that's where you'll hear this kind of music being played. I'm like, okay, cool. So on Friday, The next weekend, I went to the gay club, and I went in, and it was a DJ, and they had a real small DJ booth, but they were playing the music that I heard this guy play. And by the way, the DJ at the Den One, his name was Ron Hardy, right?
Oh, wow, amazing.
And so the DJ at the Jeffrey Pub on Friday, his name was Gene White. And so I asked him, I said, hey, man, can you teach me how to DJ, how to mix? Because at that time I didn't know how to mix the 2 records and with a mixer. And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, come up here. You know, he said, you can get on my lap. I was like, get on your lap. No, you tripping, buddy. Right? And so I'm like, oh, I'm cool with that. And so I kind of left out, right? But the next day I went back, as I was leaving out, I asked, is there another DJ the next day? He said, yeah. And so I said, okay. So I came back on Saturday, and that DJ's name was Michael Ezebuku. And so he said, I asked him, I said the same thing. Hey, man, can you teach me how to DJ? And you know, I want to learn this music. And he was really cool, man, real cool, great guy. He's like, sure, I'll teach you. And that's where I learned how to mix records. And I found the music that he had and was listening to and buying. And he kind of gave me the ropes of where to find it, different gay clubs to hear great DJs play this kind of music in Chicago at the time. And that's how I got into playing disco music in Chicago.
So who would you say your mentors were, aside from the 3 that you mentioned, or the 3 that you mentioned, people that you learned how to DJ from? Did they?
Well, Uri Abner was my sister's boyfriend. So the fact that he let me back there by his turntable at his party, that obviously was a big deal for me. And Ron Hardy, because of what he was playing and how he was playing it, I mean, he was fantastic, right? And that definitely changed my life because, again, back then I was playing R&B and funk. And from that moment on, I said, all I want to play is this music right here, which is disco, right? And so he changed my life by the way he DJ'd and kind of showed me what he used to DJ, which was so different because in my peer group, you know, all of my peers was pretty much in the R&B and funk. Disco wasn't that prevalent with them at that time. And so, and then of course, Michael Ezebuku, who actually taught me the ropes, how to mix and, the right selections and right records and where to find them and go get them. So I would say those 3. Now there was another DJ named Kirk Townsend who played at the big high school that I went to, and was the biggest high school as far as school dances was concerned, right? And he played all formats. He wasn't he wasn't a disco DJ, but he played all formats, which is what most of my peers were listening to at the time. But he was the biggest out of all those DJs, so he was also an inspiration for me as well, because we would always go there almost every weekend. You're talking about 2,000 kids. It was a bi-level party, so it was crazy. And then they had these dance groups competing at the party. It was insane, right? An insane thing. So I would say those combination, those 4 guys, totally shaped me and changed my life. Mm-hmm.
Very cool. And then when you started playing this music and then you brought it out to your friends and played for them, what was their reaction? What did they think of what you were playing, this music that you're hearing from these gay clubs?
Oh, they totally cleared the dance floors at first, right? Because they weren't used to it, right? R&B and funk, for the most part, was a slower tempo, and disco was a much faster tempo. So they totally cleared the dance floor at first. But I was very persistent, and like a lot of DJs probably would have, after a couple minutes, when they saw the dance floor clear, they might have put on another record. But I let the record play. And disco records back then were very long, right? So 8, 9, 10-minute long records, and I would just let it play. Have a drink at the bar. I don't care, get something, whatever. But you're gonna listen to this music, and so that was my mindset. You're gonna get into it just like I did, and you're gonna get this music because it's great. And eventually, that's what happened.
So it started to get more popular, right? So
once they started getting into it, now I'm the only DJ in my community playing this kind of music. So I got popular real fast, right? Took a while. I was unpopular at first, right? Because I took chances with this music. But once they got it, it was over. I'm the only one playing this and had the catalog that I had. And so the community and my peer groups got into the music. And once you get into disco and house music, it's over, baby. You'll love it for the rest of your life. Yeah.
So around that time, is that when you decide to come up with having a crew of DJs?
Well, at that time in '75, I had, but they weren't a crew of DJs, but I had a crew. I called my crew the Few Disco Corporation, right? And it was my sister's boyfriend, Ewart. It was this guy, two guys I went to school with. His name was Robert Ellis, aka Batman, and he had speakers, right? And then there was this guy named Jamie Shelton who did the pluggers. Now they call them flyers, but back then we were calling them pluggers, right? And so that was my 4-man crew at that time. Mind you, I didn't get popular overnight. It took a while, right, for people to get into this music and for it to really catch them. And then, but once it did, that part happened quick, right? So by '77, right, I was so popular by '77. Now, mind you, that's about 2 years, 75, 3 years after I started committing just straight to disco music, right? But now, so many people had got into it. I was getting calls to do all these parties, and I said, I need help. And so, and then my other partner, Ewart, he was already older than me, and he went off to college. And so I said, I'm gonna start just a DJ crew, right? Because I need help DJing. And so I asked my mother to give me help for the name of it, right? And I said, Mom, I need to come up with a new name from this DJ crew group I'm gonna start. And she said, well, she's Christian, so she said, from the Bible, she said, many are called, but few are chosen. So she said, why don't you call it the chosen few? And I said, I like that. I'm like, okay, I like that. And so that's how I came up with the name, the Chosen Few DJs. And my first DJ was my stepbrother, who's Jesse Saunders. And at that time, he was in the rock mainly, right? He loved Supertramp and acts like that, right? And so it was, at first, he honestly didn't even want any parts of it, right? But he used to do these pause button edits, and I liked them. And at that time, even though I was playing disco, I was still playing some funk, but the up-tempo funk, like One Nation Under a Groove and Flashlight, right? And so I asked him to do a pause button edit of Flashlight and One Nation Under a Groove, and there's this other record called Get Off by Foxy. And so I knew that would help him get into it because he wanted to see the reaction of what his edits that he helped me do, how they work at a party. And at that point in time, he'd never really been not to a big party, not the kind of parties I was doing. Now, mind you, at that time, I'm doing parties with 1,000, 1,500 kids. And so when I took him to the first one, it had to be 2,000 kids there. He couldn't believe it, right? And we put the pause button. We put the cassette tape in just pause button edit in the cassette deck, and then we hit it at the right time, and then the people were like, whoa, they never heard that version of that record before. And he saw how they reacted, and I knew he was in, and he was like, oh, okay, I want to do this with you. And that got him to do it with me. And I would leave my records that I collected and my equipment over his house so he could learn how to DJ and help me. And that's what started me with the Chosen Few DJs. That's how it started.
Okay. Cool. So Jesse, when he was doing those edits, would you say that's when he started to evolutionize the dance music at that time?
That was part of it, absolutely. That was definitely, that spurred him without a doubt,
Very cool. So there was a day in Chicago that I had heard about. I guess it happened on a baseball field where they destroyed a bunch of disco records and I guess basically drove disco out of the city. Do you think that affected what you were doing at the time?
No, not at all. Not for me. I think that was a narrative that the media placed, because it didn't stop anything for me, right? I played disco records after that, had disco parties after that for years, which eventually turned into house music parties. So no, but media-wise, and for artists who are making records, sure, that had an effect on them. But not for me, not at all. I mean, because honestly, that music, disco music was started in the underground first. It was played in the underground by gay DJs and dives and bars and places like that, and clubs once they came into light. So that's the roots of it, right? So you can't destroy those roots. A commercial entity can't destroy an underground route. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But the narrative can destroy it for, let's say, commercial people or trendy people,
Mm-hmm.
but not for people who are in the underground and understand where that music comes from. Like nothing can stop you from liking a record that you like.
Mm-hmm.
No words can say, hey, I tell people all the time, even when I started working for a major record label, I would say, people don't judge music like that. When you're in a car and hear a record you like on the radio, you're not like, I wonder what they look like. I wonder what nationality they are. I wonder if they're fat or if they're thin. All you know is you hear a record you like. Period.
Mm-hmm.
That's it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you want to get that record. That's all you want. So the narrative of, obviously it sells, because obviously I know both ends. It sells for some people, the look enhances their sales, right? But that's not the initial root of people when they hear music. Is what does a person look like?
Mm-hmm.
They either like the song or they don't,
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
You don't feel that it changed the underground scene, maybe made it more popular at the time when that happened, or evolved the music a little bit more?
No, I think that the underground scene has always remained the same, right? I think that nothing's going to change that. Like if you're into a certain sound of music, you're into that music. That's like saying, did radio change reggae? No,
Mm-hmm.
reggae is going to be reggae,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're into reggae,
Mm-hmm.
there'll be times where it gets popular, commercial, and then there'll be times when it's not, right? But it's still reggae
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day. And people who love reggae, you're going to find reggae.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's peaks and valleys in all music. So I think that, now I will say this, disco obviously peaked, got commercialized. All music pretty much does that, and so no, but people who are into that kind of music, and especially DJs, they'll find the great music that let's say the narrative will say it doesn't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But the narrative's a lie.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of narratives out here or agendas that people have that just aren't true, or as they say, fake news, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
So what moment do you think birthed Chicago house music? What originated the sound of what Chicago house music is today?
Well, Chicago house music is a myriad of quite a few genres, right? It's obviously a soul element has to persist. That's the one common denominator. If a track has got to have a soul energy in that track. If a vocal's got to have a soul vocal in that track. That's the general common denominator. But because I tell people all the time, Chicagoans live in the middle of the country, right? So we don't get caught up on East Coast sounds or West Coast sounds or down South sounds. We just like what's good, right? So we'll encompass what we hear. And so after disco, there was a sound. It was kind of after disco, punk became a sound, and so we encompassed punk as far as playing records in Chicago. So we had Devo, Whip It, we had Mesopotamia, B-52s, Rock Lobster, Adam Ant, you name it. We incorporated a lot of those sounds into our music. And then after that, you had kind of like Italo disco that came in. like Alexander Robotnik and I'm Hungry, and records like that were big Italo disco records. And then you had high energy kind of records that came in. And then you had like Giorgio Moroder, and then you had Gino Socio, and of course you had Kraftwerk as well that came in, right? And so we incorporated those sounds. So Chicago house music is a combination of all those elements that shape what creatively that we do when we make us a house track or a house song. There you go. It's melting pot of a gumbo.
But Chicago house definitely has like a distinct sound, and I think that part has to do partly with where you guys are located, because like music that I've heard from New York, Detroit, it's all very different. When you started getting exposure to those sounds and it started coming to Chicago, did that change how you played your music, or did you decide to continue with what you were playing? Like, how did that influence you when you had DJs from out of the city come in to visit?
No, it didn't change at all. I think that, obviously I can't speak for all producers in Chicago, but I would say that we already were embedded in because of, again, the different sounds that we kind of grew up on and heard and we took into our collections. That's what created our sound. The techno sound, the Detroit techno sound, which, by the way, a lot of Chicagoans love, right? We accepted as well, and so and some of the Detroit guys will tell you they used to come to Chicago, and that probably helped shape their sounds as well, but outside of that, no, we were focused on what we were doing and what we were creating, and the city shaped our sound. Chicago shaped our sound, and the producers who lived there did shape our sound. So there you go.
So in terms of creating music, were there any tracks that you helped make or helped influence into becoming what it was? I mean, you obviously at some point became an A&R for Trax Records. So, I mean, do you think that helped influence the Chicago house music scene?
Well, absolutely. I think we had the first house label, me and my brother. He had a label called Just Say Records. And so he's known, like, there's a record I had that I was playing, which was an import, by the way, called Mock. And so it became a big popular record, but because it was an import, there were very few copies, right? If you didn't get it, you just didn't have it. And so I was doing a party, and then Jesse wanted to do a party, but he wanted to use my record, which was a hot record at the time, on the scene. I'm like, no, you can't use my record, right? So he got mad, but he said, well, listen, leave it with me. I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it over so I can have a copy to play, right? And I'm like, I didn't know to believe him or not. But I said, okay, if you do, you have to make me a record, right? He said, okay, sure. So I'm like, whatever. So I left it over his house, and then he ended up reprogramming it, writing a song over it, and called it On and On. And so at that time, the disco scene and the house, disco house scene was on fire in Chicago, because we're talking like 1983, right? And we had a group called the Hot Mix 5 that was on the radio in Chicago on WBMX, which was a huge. Everybody would listen to that in Chicago every weekend, and one of the main DJs of Hot Mix 5, his name was Farley, who also was hung around with me and Jesse and Steve, Silk Hurley, and all of us, right? And so once we pressed the record up, we gave it to him, and he put it on the radio, and that record blew up, flew off, right? It flew and went crazy. And then my record, because Jesse kept his promise, and he made the song, and I wrote it. Me and Miss Lawrence wrote it together. And a song called Undercover. And that was the second record, and we pressed that. And Farley played that, and Farley remixed that record. He did a mix on that record. And so, because he was on the radio, that's why we let him mix the record, right? Because we knew he really played it then, which that worked, right? Because he really played that record And that record flew out, right? And then Jesse's next record after that was a song called Funk You Up, right? Which is another record that we gave to Farley and his Hot Mix 5 crew. And they played, because there's 5 guys in the Hot Mix 5, and they played the record and it flew out. So that was those records were the start of the house music scene coming out of Chicago. That was the roots of it, right? And it was because of what me and Jesse and Vince Lawrence, who also co-wrote songs, were doing with this new label that we started, which was Jesse Records. And because of radio, Farley and Hot Mix 5. That is what started the house music scene in Chicago, period. Okay. And from that, other DJs were like, wow, shit, they can do it. We can do it, right? And then other DJs like Steve Hurley, Jamie Principle, who's an artist, right? Chippy, Adonis, Marshall Jefferson, the rest is history. Then they were like, oh, we can do this too. And then they started making their records, which came a year later. And then that really just made the house music scene go crazy. And all these records were played on the hottest radio station in Chicago at that time. So it's one thing when you play records in the club. It's another thing when they get rotation on radio, right? Because now, instead of playing for, let's say, 300 people here, 400 people there, 1,000 kids here, you're playing for millions of people listening to on the radio. So the impact of the Hot Mix 5 and the radio at that particular time was huge, as well the impact of us making records, Just Say. And then Just Say, where we were getting our records pressed, that became the beginning of Trax Records. Because we had another label called Trax, but Jesse, I don't know, he spent his money. So he made a deal with Larry. He said, Larry Sherman owned the pressing plant. He said, look, I'll give you Trax, the label Trax, if you press up this next, which was Real Love, this next copy of a record that I'm about to put out for free. And he said, and so Larry wanted to get into it because he was pressing K-Tel records, right? Like polka records. And he's like, hold on, but we were selling 5 times them polka records he was selling. So he said that's what made him want to get into the business. And so we gave him Trax, and that's how Trax Records started, the label Trax. There you go.
So house music seemed to have exploded at that time then. Exploded.
And then I started working at Trax and letting Larry know which records to pick, because he didn't know. He was a white Jewish guy from pressing polka records, right? So people would start bringing tapes to him, and he'd say, Wayne, what do you think of this? Wayne, what do you think of that? What do you think? That's how Trax Records began, and that's how my being A&R began as a record executive. That's how it all began.
So Larry Hurd, have you worked with him? Have any history with him at all?
Just from him bringing records to Larry down to the pressing plant, right? And me saying, oh, that record's hot. That's what I would do, right? But no in the studio, no. But I mean, Larry's he came in as an accomplished musician and producer, and Robert Owens, an amazing stylist singer. Like I can't say how much I love his voice. People always, you have critics or whatever, but to me, Robert has a very unusual singing voice, and he's really amazing. He's a rare talent when it comes to that. But yeah, so Curtis McLean sang on "Move Your Body," who's another. I mean, that was a magical vocal performance. That's why it stands the test of time, and he's a great guy. So shouts out to Curtis McLean, the singer on "Move Your Body."
So when house music started getting very popular, I mean, obviously you had to put together the group Chosen Few. When did that first start, and who are the members of the Chosen Few?
So the members are Tony Hatchett, Jesse Saunders, Andre Hatchett, Alan King, and later on we added Terry Hunter and Mike Dunn. But the initial, first 2 or 3 decades, it was me, Jesse, Tony, Alan, and Andre.
And then did you guys travel outside Chicago? Did you play internationally anywhere or anywhere domestically?
Oh yeah, Mike and Terry have been traveling internationally for years, but recently me and Alan, because we both had jobs, right? Like Alan's an attorney, right, and then I was a record exec at Jive RCA Records. But now, more recently, we've been traveling overseas to Italy. Just got back from Italy, going to London. Was in London last year. Did Croatia, Sunset Beat Festival, and Angels of Love Festival in Italy, and the house head parties in London. Um, so those are some of the newer events, and hope to, obviously want to travel more and spread our house music love to the rest of the places. Actually, I want to go to Japan. I've never been there, and I think I want to go to Ibiza. That's kind of like on my bucket list. But because I heard so much good stories about them, and anywhere where there are house music lovers in the world, I would like to touch. While I still can.
What do you think of house music today with the internet and social media? Do you feel like it's becoming more generalized, or you think it's still regionally specific as it was before?
No, I mean there's so much creativity with producers and songwriters and singers that it will always be vibrant. It will always be fresh. There will always be critics. I remember when house music first started. Oh, this ain't gonna last. It's only gonna last 4 or 5 years. Same thing with disco. This is not gonna last. So rap, same thing. This won't let. So it's a bunch of nonsense. People, once they get into a genre and love music, there's so much creativity, and with technology changing all the time, there's so many different things you can add. And the one thing I love about house music more than any other genre, house music has no fucking rules. Zero rules. You could be a hook. You could just sing a verse. You could scat. You can put jazz. You can put opera with house, jazz with house. It doesn't matter, right? It's just no fucking rules to have. So it's unlimited. And that's what I love about house music.
So some people say that Frankie Knuckles brought house music to Chicago. Do you agree with that?
No, not at all. And Frankie wouldn't, if he was here, he wouldn't agree with that either. Frankie, first of all, me and Frankie were very close. A magnificent DJ and producer, and I have nothing but love for Frankie Knuckles, right? I mean, he also helped shape me as a DJ because I used to go to the warehouse all the time, right? But no, not at all. I mean, actually, the narrative that he brought disco to Chicago or house music to Chicago is flat out disrespectful, and that's a narrative. That's not Frankie doing that, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason I say that it's disrespectful because there were many DJs in Chicago, gay DJs, who some names people may not have even heard of, who were playing disco long before Frankie came to Chicago. And so that's like me saying somebody brought disco to New York and Larry Levan. And there were probably DJs. Larry Levan was obviously a great DJ, but I'm sure there were DJs even before Larry Levan, right? So, did Frankie make an impact? Absolutely, in Chicago at the warehouse, just like Larry Levan made an impact at the Zanzibar Paradise Garage. I'm sorry, the Paradise Garage in New York, just like Tony Humphries made an impact at the Zanzibar in New Jersey, right? Mm-hmm. So I can go on. Stuart Gardner, amazing gay DJ in Atlanta, made an impact in Atlanta, mm-hmm. playing disco music. Billy here in LA made an impact at Catch One, mm-hmm. another amazing DJ. So, but no, Frankie did not bring disco to Chicago. In fact, Chicago had our first disco in Chicago was the Bistro, mm-hmm. which came out, which was started in 1973, long before Frankie came to Chicago, right? Mm-hmm. There were many DJs, Craig Cannon, Ron Hardy, Michael Fields, Artie Feldman. I mean, I could go on and on. There are many DJs in Chicago that were playing disco before Frankie got off the plane in Chicago. So that's why I say that's not fair to them, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not fair to the producers, all the producers on the south side and west side and north side of Chicago who started, making house music And mind you, house music wasn't even made to 80, start in 83, 84, the first house record came out, right? So the warehouse was closed. The warehouse was open. It's open in 77, the one that Frankie was at. Mm-hmm. And it closed in like 82. So that would be impossible, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why I say that's a big myth, whatever. But, there you go. Mm-hmm.
What is your most memorable moment as executive VP of A&R?
I signed some amazing artists. I signed R. Kelly, who at one point was the king of R&B. I signed Charlie Wilson, who was as a Gap Band. He was known as a Gap Band, but as a solo artist, I signed Charlie Wilson. And when I signed him, when I brought him in, everybody said he's too old, And I'm like, too old? This guy's an amazing voice. Are you kidding, right? And but I convinced him to sign Charlie as a solo artist, and I ended up giving him at least, I want to say 17 or 19 Grammy nominations, and he just, #1 records and gold and platinum records. So, you know what? It's funny. I guess it's hard for me to say that, because every day as an A&R, you're convincing like your bosses to believe what you believe and hear what you hear, right? When I got Justin Timberlake to work with Charlie Wilson and everything, that's not going to happen, So there are many moments for me that I proved them wrong, right? And there's some records that I told them to get that they didn't take, right? Which became big hits, like Pump Up the Jam or Lil Louis French Kiss or rap artists in Chicago, Do or Die, Mickey Halstead, Shauna and Tifa. I told him to get Whoop There He Is, the second version, the tag team version, with the Kano sample they had in it, right? And, so they passed on a lot of that stuff. But my point is that for me, being validated by the public is what I love, right? I actually brought them to Macarena. It was in Spanish, right? When I brought it to them, but I told them if they transposed the lyrics, it was going to work, right? And that eventually happened and worked, right? So I brought them to Cha Cha Slide. I can go on and on, right? So, but so for me, it's those moments that for me answers your question.
Were there any regrets that you have looking back at your career?
Regrets.
Anything that you would have done differently?
I would say one, being more forceful. I think I could have. At that time, I didn't know the leverage I had, right? Because I was kind of naive, getting into the music business, right? I didn't understand the leverage I had. So I think I could have been a little bit more forceful as far as, signing acts.
This is good advice for the younger generation.
Right, yeah. So I think that part, regrets about not knowing the business overall at a younger age, right? I should have probably read more, and at that time, but you're so into it, like you just worry about accomplishing stuff, I think that I think those would be my regrets, Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's easy to get taken advantage of when you don't understand all the rules and whatnot.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Any message that you would have for aspiring musicians or DJs or people who want to be more involved with the house music scene?
Yeah, definitely. First of all, don't let no one tell you or use the word can't. If you believe there's something you want to do, and I don't care what age it is either, because there's so much negativity out there, There's ageism, just like it's sexism, just like it's racism, right? So don't pay attention to any of that, right? Just follow follow your heart, follow your drive, and go for whatever you feeling that you want to go for. At and believe in yourself, believe in your spirit and yourself. I would say that. Now I will also say this, right? If you do something that doesn't work and you put everything into it, believe that it doesn't work, right? So you don't want to keep doing the same thing, and then everybody's telling you it doesn't work. I'll give you an example. I did a mix one time early on, and there were 2 mixes of this record, and I just knew my mix was the bomb, right? But I went and played it for different people, and I didn't tell them whose mix it was. I played it for about 20 people. All 20 people picked the other mix.
Oh, no.
I was like, so I had to come to grips with myself. Like, no, it's not good enough. It's not working, right? And so you have to be objective as well. You have to be objective as well. But if it's confirmed, I believe in the public. So if it's confirmed by the public, I'm going to roll with that. And so don't be afraid to test and see what other people think as well. Now I ain't talking about your homies and your friends and your mama. I'm talking about just regular people, right? But be fair to yourself as far as showing, exposing your talents. But believe in your talents up to a point. But if someone says, well, that's not work or that's not good, and there's a bunch of people saying that, then believe that too. There you go.
Thank you for that. Any upcoming plans that you have? Anything production? Anything that you're got in the works that you're doing right now?
Yeah, I've been. I got sick recently, and so I was home for an extended period of time, and so I just started working on productions with this guy, my production partner named Steve Maestro, Miggy Maestro out of Chicago. So we ended up doing close to 30 tracks, songs together. And so we'll be releasing those, sooner than later. I'm an A&R director for Mirrorball, which is a dance label, Terry Hunter's dance label. And so working on that, always, doing the festival, Chosen Few Festival every year. So working on that. I'm working on a Chosen Few DJ cruise, January 2027. So I'm working on that, and just doing events and parties and music. Music is my life. So I got to keep on dancing. Music is my life. So there you go.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you guys want to follow Wayne, you can find him on IG, Facebook, Chosen Few DJs on the website. Chosen Few DJs. And DJ Wayne Williams Instagram, and Wayne Williams on Facebook. And you can see I'm on TikTok too, DJ Wayne Williams. You can see what's up and coming, so make sure to follow him. Again, thank you guys for joining us. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Tune in again next time for Amazing TV.